Hello. That is the Stele of Revealing. At the Bulak Museum, it was exhibit number 666. It's a funeral stele. Okay, you probably recognize it. And it's actually a funeral stele of a historical character. It's in the empirical history of the 25th or 26th dynasty of Ankaf Nakansu. That guy right there. And he hand painted it himself. It's like his own tombstone that he hand painted himself. And on the back, it's inscribed on the back too. Okay, that made it unusual in Egyptian antiquities to have a funeral stele inscribed on the back. And the back of it, the text on the back of it is the same text that is inscribed on the stone or clay scarab, a very large scarab beetle. It's on the foot of the scarab beetle that is placed in the mummy's, in place of the mummy's heart. So in other words, the stele itself was like, if you put it on its face like that, the stele is like the foot of the mummy's heart chakra, okay, which is kind of interesting. Now, Crowley had it paraphrased, had it translated as best that he could, and then Crowley then paraphrased the French translation of this, the hieroglyphs, on both the front and the back, before the great events of 1904. It was part of the preparation for the Supreme Invocation of Horus, which is taking place in March. So Crowley was probably about this time of year in 1904 having the stele translated and him working on it, because Rose had identified the stele as the source of the desire of the Egyptian gods to communicate with Crowley. Here's what it says, okay, right down here, or here is Crowley's paraphrase of the inscription upon the obverse of the Stele of Revealing. Above the gemmed azure, the naked splendor of Nuit, she bends in ecstasy to kiss the secret ardors of Hadit, the winged globe. The starry blue are mine, O Ankaf Nakansu. Now, Ankaf Nakansu is the dead guy. I am the Lord of Thebes, and I, the inspired fourth speaker of Mentu, for me unveils the veiled sky, the self-slain Ankaf Kansu, whose words are truth I invoke. I greet thy presence, O Rahur Kuit. Unity uttermost showed, I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God, who makest the gods in death to tremble before thee. I adore thee. Appear on the throne of Ra, open the ways of the Ku, lighten the ways of the Ka. The ways of the Kabs runs through to stir me or still me, Aum, let it kill me. And in the original translation that Crowley was working on, it actually said, Aum, let it kill me. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door into the house of Ra and tomb of Kefra and Ahithur. I am thy Theban, O Mentu, the prophet Ankaf and Kansu. By Besna Maut my breast I beat, By wise Tanique I weave my spell. Show thy star splendor, O Nuith, bid me within thine house to dwell. O winged snake of light Hadit, abide with me, Rahur Kuwait. And just as a digression, Besna Maut and Tanique are Ankaf Nakansu's mother and father. Okay, now on the reverse side, the side that is the translation of the spell that's put on that heart scarab's foot, it says this. Saith of Mentu, the truth-telling brother, who was master of Thebes from his birth, O heart of me, heart of my mother, O heart which I had upon the earth, stand not thou against me, a witness. Oppose me not, judge me in my quest. Accuse me not now of unfitness before the great God, the dread Lord of the West, for I fashioned the one to the other with a spell for their magical girth. A spell for their mystical girth, the earth and the wonderful West, when I flourished, O earth, on thy breast. Now this is from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's a spell from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And they insert the name of Ankaf Nakansu, sort of like fill in the blanks of the dead person here. Fill in the name of the dead person here, okay? The dead man, Ankaf Nakansu, saith with his voice of truth and calm, O thou that hast a single arm, O thou that glitterest in the moon, I weave thee in the spinning charm, I lure thee with the billowy tune. The dead man, Ankaf Nakansu, has parted from the darkling crowds, hath joined the dwellers of the light, opening Duant the starry abode, their keys receiving. The dead man, Ankaf Nakansu, hath made his passage into night, his pleasure on the earth to do, among the living. Now, why am I reading you this morning? Because I want to talk a little bit about the magical solar rites of Thelema. And it's a few words that open up the chapter, The Solar Rites, from my book, The Magic of Aleister Crowley. The epigram is from the Book of the Law. There is a secret door that I shall make to establish thy way in all the quarters. These are the adorations, as thou hast written. That's from chapter 3. Within a religious context, the magic of Thelema could accurately be described as solar worship. The only thing new and revolutionary about the worship about it is the worshipper's relation to the sun. It doesn't take very long for the modern student of comparative religion to see the countless similarities and parallels inherent in the world's so-called great religions. We might even say, if we allow ourselves the emancipation of a truly open mind, that the religions of the past are really only aspects of one religion whose universal object of worship is the sun, and whose ceremonies, observances, and holy days are based upon the reoccurring yearly passion play that is the solar calendar. Terrestrial life pantomimes the sun's life-creating qualities in the reproductive capabilities of each organism. Our ancestors drew direct parallel between the sun and the phallus, between sunlight, blood, and semen. This correlation assumes increasingly profound dimensions as we apply our greater understanding of astronomy, physics, and medicine to this great, evolving religion. The simple truth of the death of the sun was destroyed by the truth of the heliocentric system, which is destroyed by the truth that our solar system revolves around a central something which may very well be a black and inscrutable negative dimension. Theoretically, all this originated as a compact, pre-existent negative singularity, which for some reason could not contain itself, and in all likelihood will someday withdraw everything back into nothingness. Meanwhile, we're discovering that everything we were, are, and shall be is encoded upon a chip called DNA, which impresses itself upon our cells and flows like an eternal river through the blood of infinite generations of whose most important function is to serve as an organic ark for this evolving super life. All of the thelemic rituals express the formulae of the new solar consciousness, but two in particular incorporate the sun itself as the central element of our ceremony, Liber Resh and the Mass of the Phoenix. Resh is a simple series of 4 adorations which are performed at dawn, noon, sunset, and midnight. They're formatted as classic Egyptian adorations, but customized to satisfy Crowley's idea of the new magical formula. Resh serves as an excellent form of background concentration, which requires us to acknowledge our magical relationship with the sun at least 4 times in our busy day. The object of this practice is firstly to remind the aspirant at regular intervals of the great work, secondly, to bring him into conscious personal relation with the center of our system, and thirdly, for advanced students, to make actual magical contact with the spiritual energy of the sun and thus draw actual force from him. The Mass of the Phoenix is a Eucharistic ceremony created to be celebrated at sunset in order to fortify the magician's awareness of the sun during the nighttime journey. Like the rituals of the star ruby and the star sapphire, it first appeared in print in the Book of Lies, where it was positioned as chapter 44. And 44 is the Hebrew, is the number of the Hebrew word for blood, Daleth Mem. Because there appears to be an element of self-mutilation in the Mass of the Phoenix, there continues to be considerable misunderstanding about the ritual, and outrageous statements by extremists on both of the ends of the magical spectrum have caused many serious students to avoid it altogether. I know I've freaked a bunch of people out with my Mass of the Phoenix stories. Crowley wrote in chapter 20 of Magic and Theory and Practice that the Mass of the Phoenix should be performed daily at sunset by every magician, unquote. Now, did he really expect us to risk our health by slashing our chests open every evening? I confess, as an overzealous young fool, I celebrated the Mass of the Phoenix by using a surgeon's scalpel in place of the burin to make the proper sign. To my amazement, the blade painlessly disappeared almost entirely into the flesh of my chest before I realized what was happening. The cut was extremely clean, and for a moment there was no bleeding whatsoever. Then it came, quickly running in a thick stream over the front of my body. Determined to complete the ceremony, I tried to, quote, staunch the blood with the cake of light, only to have it disintegrate in my fingers in a flood of warm blood. The sun was half obscured by the horizon, and its soft orange light bathed my blood-soaked chest and fingers. I bolted for the bathroom as I nervously parroted, With mirth I now go forth, and with thanksgiving to do my pleasure upon the earth among the living and the living. I was frightened, agitated, injured, and embarrassed. I did not feel very spiritual. Let the blood of my sacrifice wash you clean of any temptation to do such a stupid thing to yourself. It's obvious from the text that the magician is actually to draw blood in order to consecrate the cake of light before consuming it. But nowhere is it indicated that pain, scarring, or injury is a required element of the ceremony. It's a Eucharist and not a ritual of self-mutilation. An excellent way to make a proper sign is to use a machinist's scribe, a rod of steel tapered to an extremely sharp point. It's easy to sterilize, and if you're careful, it's possible to just lightly scratch the symbol on the flesh, and that scratch, that little red welt, will remain visible for hours. And by applying just a little more pressure on a small area of the scratch, the tool that will break the skin enough for a tiny drop of blood to rise to the surface. This fulfills the literal interpretation of the ritual without harm to the magician, and allows him or her to consecrate or to concentrate on the real purpose of the ceremony, namely a solar Eucharist. The ideal setting for the Mass of the Phoenix is outdoors or before a window open to accommodate the view of the setting sun. The ritual is so brief that the magician can begin as the sun first touches the horizon and have time to charge the blood on the chest with the last rays of the setting sun. This solar consecrated holy blood is then trapped in the cake of light and eaten by the magician. When the Mass is over, the essence of the sun is safely sheltered until dawn in the body of the magician. If performed regularly and over a period of time, the body of the magician will be renewed cell by cell by this solar nourishment. It's rare for someone to have a lifestyle that would accommodate the perpetual celebration of the Mass of the Phoenix, but it's an excellent component in the daily regimen of a magical retirement. Liber Resh is so short that it's performed at least in an informal format almost everywhere, and Crowley urged his students to never abandon its observance. Now, first of all, on my Facebook page, if you're watching this on Facebook, just a couple minutes ago, I posted a video of Constance and I doing a ceremony that we do every April for the celebration of the holy days. And she lights a fire with a Crowley kind of fire opening ceremony, and then I do a Mass of the Phoenix, and you can see the whole thing play out. But the reason, I'm just going to briefly read it to you right now, is to show you where these words came from off the stele itself. The magician, his breast bare, stands before an altar on which are his burin, bell, thurible, and 2 of the cakes of light. In the sign of the Emperor, he reaches across the altar and cries, Hail, Ra, that goest in thy bark into the caverns of the dark. He gives the sign of silence, takes the bell and fire in his hands. East of the altar see me stand with light and music in mine hand. He strikes 11 times on the bell. Ding, 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 ding. 353. Okay, 11. And places the fire in the thurible. I strike the bell, I light the flame, I utter the mysterious name, Abrahadabra. He strikes again 11 times on the bell. Now I begin to pray. Thou child, holy thy name and undefiled, thy reign is come, thy will is done. Here is the bread, here is the blood. Bring me through midnight to the sun. Save me from evil and from good. That thy one crown of all the 10, even now and here, be mine. Amen. He puts the first cake on the thurible. I burn the incense cake, proclaim these adorations of thy name. And that's when he says, unity uttermost showed, I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God, who makest the gods and death to tremble before thee. I adore thee. Appear on the throne of Ra, open the ways of the Ku, lighten the ways of the Ka. The ways of the Kabs runs through to stir me or still me. Aum, let it fill me. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door into the house of Ra and tomb of Kephra and Ahathor. I am thy Theban, O Mentu, the prophet Ankafna Kansu. By best Namat my breast I beat, by wise Tanik I weave my spell. Show thy star splendor, O Nuit, bid me within thine house to dwell. O winged snake of light Hadit, abide with me, Rahur Kuit. Then, with the burn, he makes the sign. Behold this bleeding breast of mine, gashed with the sacramental sign. He puts, he puts the first cake on the thurible and says, I burn the incense cake, proclaim. Remember? So we've got one, as he's doing the adorations, he's got one of those cakes burning as incense. Then, after the adorations, he cuts his chest, puts a second cake to the chest. Behold this bleeding breast of mine, gashed with the sacramental sign. I staunch the blood, the wafer soaks it up, and the high priest invokes. Then he eats the cake with a little drop of blood in it. This bread I eat, this oath I swear, as I inflame myself with prayer. There is no grace, there is no guilt. This is the law, do what thou wilt. He strikes the bell 11 more times, which makes a total of 44 rings. And he says, Abrahadabra. And right off the stele, I entered in with woe. With mirth I now go forth, and with thanksgiving, to do my pleasure on the earth among the legions of the living. So that's our little excursion into the stele of revealing and into the solar rites, particularly the Mass of the Phoenix. If you haven't seen it already, take a look at the video that Constance and I made, because we're going to be doing more of that stuff as we approach March 25th and the beginning of the High Holy Days of Thelema. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.